Arrest him.
What?
For blocking the roadway.
This guy's arresting me for just standing here, and now he's taking my phone away.
Cops are supposed to serve the community and keep people safe. But sometimes, things go sideways, especially when pride and ego get in the way. What happens when an officer lets power go to their head and steps way out of line?
You're not going near that vehicle. I do not know what's in that vehicle, and the way you're acting right now, I don't trust you. You're going to either stand here, wait for the supervisor, or you're going to tell me you're going to leave, and then we're going to get in our car and leave.
In this video, we're diving into real-life stories of overconfident cops who tried to push people around, only to discover they messed with the wrong ones. These weren't just any citizens. They were informed, calm, and ready to stand their ground. And let's just say, things didn't exactly end well for the officers.
I did not break the law.
All right, can I see your license, registration, insurance?
Okay, what is your cause for pulling me over and asking for my information?
Routine. Stop gone wrong. In an incident that quickly became the talk of the town, a U.S. Army lieutenant experienced a routine traffic stop gone horribly wrong.
It's clear that unequivocally we are asking for the resignations or the terminations of Police Chief Riddle and Officer Crocker.
It began when he was flagged down for a seemingly minor infraction, a missing rear license plate on his new SUV. Although he had a temporary plate inside the car, which was visible from the window, the stop escalated into a dramatic confrontation.
Keep your hands outside the window. Keep your hands outside the window. Get out of the car now. Get out of the car. Now. Get out of the car now.
From the onset, tensions were high. The officer in charge demanded that the lieutenant keep his hands clearly visible outside the car, while the lieutenant maintained that his hands were already in view and sought clarification about the situation. The atmosphere turned rapidly hostile as the officer commanded him to exit the vehicle, repeating the order several times despite the lieutenant's growing confusion.
I'm honestly afraid to get out.
Yeah, you should be. Get out. Get out.
Get out the car.
Get out
I
now.
have not committed any crime.
You're being stopped for a traffic violation. You're not cooperating at this point right now. You're under arrest for, you're being detained, okay? You're being detained for obstruction of justice.
Traffic violation. I do not have to get out the vehicle. You haven't even told me why I'm being stopped.
As a serving military member accustomed to orderly procedures, the lieutenant found himself in a situation that defied protocol. He argued that his actions were completely normal and that he was simply abiding by common sense practices by driving to a well-lit area. However, the officer's response was anything but routine. Without warning, a canister of pepper spray was deployed, catching the lieutenant completely off guard. The substance provoked an intense, immediate reaction, causing him to wince in pain and forcing him to comply with further instructions. The lieutenant, whose background involved active military service, felt deeply aggrieved by the officer's aggressive tactics.
Get out of the car. Get out of the car now.
That's fucked up.
Get out of the car now.
Sir, just get out the car.
The rapid escalation led to him being compelled out of his SUV and subsequently pushed to the ground, leaving him distressed and questioning the necessity of the extreme measures. The officer justified the use of such strong measures by labeling the stop as high risk, due to suspicions that the lieutenant was attempting to elude the authorities.
Took certain actions that created where we got to, and I think that, you know, we'll let the court sort that part of it out and litigate that part.
However, his account clashed sharply with that of the lieutenant and his legal representative, who argued that the situation was mishandled from the start. Retired law enforcement veteran Cheryl Dorsey shared her perspective on the matter, stressing the importance of ensuring drivers are in well-lit areas during stops, which she believed would prevent misunderstandings and reduce undue tension.
Different how? Different that Lieutenant Nazario was stopped and police officers exited their vehicles with guns pulled? No, that does not change anyway how I view the video. However, Windsor has said that they've been transparent.
The fallout from the incident was swift and decisive. The officer responsible for the aggressive response was promptly dismissed from his position. The controversy ignited a broader debate over the handling of routine traffic stops, particularly when they involve individuals serving in the military. Many questioned whether the lieutenant could have acted differently, or if the officer's reaction was an overstep of his authority. The wrong target. A man named David Wiggins became caught in the middle of a situation meant for someone else. The incident began on an ordinary day when officers received a report of a fleeing suspect driving a car with a similar license plate and vehicle to one that was later seen speeding away. The police set their sights on David Wiggins, mistakenly believing his car was the one they were seeking. Without much hesitation, law enforcement pulled Wiggins over on the side of the road. As the vehicle slowed to a stop, officers quickly surrounded the car. In a hurried and tense move, Wiggins was ordered out of his vehicle. What followed was a series of rapid actions that left him in a state of shock.
Hands out the window! Both hands! You got anybody in there with you? Anybody with you? Take your right hand up in the door.
The officers, intent on maintaining control, managed to cuff him and force him to the ground, all while holding him at gunpoint. The situation escalated further as the officers took no time to confirm the identification details that could have cleared up the confusion earlier on. Instead, the focus remained solely on the mistaken belief that Wiggins was the suspect. In the chaos that unfolded, there was little room for careful investigation. Even though the suspect's description was shared and the license plate seemed to match, no proper check was conducted before escalating the confrontation.
Mr. Wiggins, for 3 minutes, for 180 seconds, he was in handcuffs, on the ground, face down, with a gun drawn to him, with multiple officers around him.
The entire encounter lasted for just a few minutes, but for Wiggins, it felt like an eternity. Frozen on the ground, handcuffed and confronted by armed officers, he endured moments filled with fear and uncertainty about his fate. It was a stark example of a situation where a split-second decision led to a drastic error, turning an ordinary road stop into a scene of excessive force. Once the officers finally realized the mistake, a reluctant apology was offered to Wiggins, acknowledging the mix-up.
This ain't even him. But they got almost the identical tag.
You were chasing a black Dodge Challenger?
Look just like this. Right here. You're good. That's scary. Look, I'm sorry. You got almost the same tag, same car. He must have passed you going through, and you turned off this one.
Yeah, it must have happened. We had everybody coming to do.
Yeah. You good?
Yeah.
All right. You have a good one, okay? I'm sorry about that.
However, the apology did little to ease the lingering sense of injustice. The way the situation was handled raised serious concerns about the practices being employed in high-pressure law enforcement situations. Many began to question the training, judgment, and protocols that allowed such a mistake to occur in the first place. As the details of the incident continued to surface, it was clear that the repercussions for David Wiggins ran deeper than a simple error on the part of the police. In July 2023, Wiggins took legal action by filing a lawsuit against the city of Marion. The lawsuit made serious claims, including gross negligence, civil assault, battery, and false imprisonment. The allegations pointed to an abuse of power and a failure to protect the rights of a citizen during what should have been an ordinary traffic stop. The legal complaint detailed the distressing moments when Wiggins lay on the ground, vulnerable and unsure if he would face serious harm.
And so being on the ground for that long, he didn't know if the next breath that he took was going to be his last. And so it really, really traumatized him. He's been in therapy since then, dealing with the effects that this has had on his psyche and his overall being and his interaction with law enforcement, to be frank.
Parked legally, treated illegally. A case of police overreach in Alachua County has sparked a lively debate and left many community members feeling both shocked and disillusioned by the events as they unfolded.
You're going to give me your driver's license here in a minute. or you're gonna go to jail for resisting.
Okay.
I'm being honest with you.
I'm going to give him a license, then I'm going to file an internal affairs complaint on you for violating my Fourth Amendment
totally
right.
allowed to do
Name
that.
and badge number, sir?
What began as an everyday scenario quickly escalated into a controversial encounter that highlighted the sometimes troubling dynamics between law enforcement and local citizens. It all started when an investigator, engaged in his routine duties, parked his vehicle in front of a modest house in a quiet neighborhood. It was a completely ordinary sight, one that residents might see on any given day when officers are out in the field. However, for one homeowner, the presence of an unfamiliar car parked so close to his house immediately raised his suspicions. Naturally anxious about protecting his home and family, he picked up the phone and dialed the authorities, reporting what he believed to be a potentially suspicious presence in his area. The response was swift. Officers from the Alachua County Sheriff's Department arrived on the scene, and instead of approaching the situation with calm inquiry, they took an unusually aggressive stance. They demanded that the investigator present identification, insisting on strict compliance by employing a tone and demeanor that bordered on intimidation. Caught completely off guard, the investigator found himself with no other option than to comply. He handed over his official credentials, a necessary act under more routine circumstances, but one that became highly problematic in this context. This was not an ordinary ID check. It was an unprovoked demand steeped in an air of disrespect that hinted at a larger issue of authority misuse.
So you, in your experience,
Yeah.
if somebody was parked right in front of your house like that vehicle is,
Yeah.
would that rouse your suspicion?
Perhaps, yeah.
Would you call law enforcement?
No.
You'd probably go out and handle it yourself.
Probably.
Would you arm yourself and go out there and do it?
May or may not.
Okay, well, not everyone has that courage, sir. They're not as brave as you. So that's when they call us, because this is who we swore our oath to, the citizens of Alachua
Okay.
County.
All right.
So I came here.
Yep.
Now I have to verify who you are.
Well,
now this deputy
let's stop right there. Let's stop right there. See, you think this is funny, Deputy?
No, I do not think
Let's
this is
make it
funny.
serious.
I don't think
Let's
this is
talk to
funny
each
at all.
other, two gentlemen, okay?
The investigator's rights, both civil and constitutional, were trampled upon in a manner that seemed designed not only to assert control over him, but also to send a broader message to the community about the unchecked power that law enforcement can sometimes wield.
I tell you what, I'm gonna just go wait up at my vehicle.
Yeah,
I
sir,
don't
listen to me. Do not go. I do not know what's in
I
your
didn't
vehicle.
say in. I did not say
you're
in.
gonna either wait here or you're gonna leave. You're not going in that near
I
that
said
vehicle.
I'm just gonna go stand
You're not
over there.
going near that vehicle. I do not know what's in that vehicle, and the way you're acting right now, I don't trust you. You're gonna either stand here, wait for the supervisor, or you're gonna tell me you're gonna leave, and then we're gonna get in our car and leave.
Am I being detained?
How would you like to? What did I just tell you? You can leave, but then we're leaving. That's the bottom line. If you're going back to the vehicle, we're gonna get
Go
out
ahead
of
and
here.
leave. I'll wait for the supervisor.
She's not coming up here by herself. I can tell you that right now.
The situation quickly morphed from a minor misunderstanding to a public spectacle of what many saw as overzealous policing. The officers appeared more intent on asserting their authority than on carrying out their fundamental duty of serving and protecting the community. Their actions reflected a troubling mindset, one driven by arrogance and a misguided interpretation of what it means to enforce the law. Rather than strictly adhering to established department policies and legal standards, the officers improvised their response. They used the homeowner's call as a convenient pretext for aggressive behavior that did nothing but escalate the tension. Feeling increasingly cornered by the situation, the determined investigator did not simply back down. He respectfully insisted on speaking with a supervisor. When the call was made and a supervisor eventually arrived on the scene, it became evident that this was not an isolated case of overreach, but rather part of a broader pattern. The supervisor, rather than providing a quick resolution, seemed to echo the same lack of understanding and misinterpretation of legal procedures displayed by her officers.
At any point, have you given them ID or no?
I had to. He said he was going to lock me up. He said he was going to arrest me.
Okay, so you provided ID. Obviously,
Under the threat of being arrested.
Okay, so obviously we know who you are.
Yes.
All right, and you said you would explain to me your purpose for being
I'm
here,
an
right?
investigator, as I explained to him.
Private investigator?
That's correct. Before I gave him my ID, I said, look, I'm an investigator, I'm working. He wanted to know who I was working. I told him it was none of his damn business.
In a calm yet firm manner, the investigator took the opportunity to educate her on the finer points of Florida law, details that clearly illustrated when and why it is legally acceptable to request identification. His explanation was methodical and detailed, underscoring his personal experiences of past injustices, which included 3 instances where he had been arrested under similarly questionable circumstances. In one particularly contentious case, he was even on the brink of suing the state for $5 million for what he saw as blatant abuses of authority. Determined to prevent future abuses and to save everyone time and hassle in subsequent incidents, the investigator advised the supervisor that a thorough review of Florida law was in order, a recommendation that would ideally take just 15 to 20 minutes of her day.
What does the law say about you demanding ID? That's what I'm asking you to say, because that's what this whole issue is over. We're dancing around it with every other thing. I don't disagree with you on anything you said, except the semantical point of demanding ID.
This concise call for reflection was both a critique of her own practices and a broader appeal for reform within the department. The message was clear. A proper understanding of legal procedures is essential for anyone entrusted with the responsibility of enforcing the law, and failure to adhere to these principles not only undermines public trust, but also the very foundation of justice itself. Wrong turn on the right. In a small California town, something unusual happened one August day in 2019 that left one officer red-faced and a motorcyclist triumphant. The motorcyclist, riding through Ramona, was pulled over by a state trooper for a reason that, on its face, seemed more absurd than criminal.
Okay, does it say that in this lane sharing statute?
I don't know what the lane sharing statute is.
So the rules governing.
There's not 2 lanes. So if there's 2 lanes, so let's just say.
I'm gonna reach for my phone. Don't get. Hey, come here for a second. This is the DMV website. California law does not allow or prohibit motorcycles from passing other vehicles proceeding in the same direction within the same lane.
The officer was convinced that the rider had committed an offense simply by maneuvering his bike in a way the law did not clearly forbid. The trooper's justification was rooted in his interpretation of lane use on the road. He argued that because there wasn't a traditional 2-lane setup, the motorcyclist had broken a rule simply by riding within the same lane. Determined and cool, the motorcyclist calmly explained his understanding of California law.
Within the same lane has nothing to do with 2 lanes. I was within the same lane. I wasn't past the white line.
All right, I'm not gonna argue, man. Can you read that again? I'm sorry.
Sure. Well, here, you read it right there. California law does not allow or prohibit, that means I'm allowed to do it, from passing other vehicles proceeding in the same direction within the same lane. A practice often called lane splitting, lane sharing, or filtering. Lane sharing.
According to the guidelines, passing on the right, sometimes called lane splitting or lane sharing, was perfectly legal as long as it was done safely and within the confines of the same lane. Instead of acknowledging this straightforward point, the trooper's pride took control. He proceeded to drill the rider for his license, registration, and insurance. The motorcyclist, confident in his interpretation, questioned the officer about what specific law he had violated. In his own words, he pointed out that if the officer was asking for these documents, then he must have actually broken a rule the rider was certain he had not. The conversation quickly shifted from a simple traffic stop into an extended debate over the exact meanings of lane splitting and lane sharing.
Hey, here's some more clarification for you, okay? Sorry, I didn't mean to touch you. All right, AB 51, into law, which define lane splitting as driving a motorcycle as 2 wheels in contact with the ground between rows of stopped or moving vehicles in the same lane. Doesn't matter. I can be in the same lane as long as did you see me over the white line at all?
On the shoulder, no.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you.
As defined by the California DMV. As the dialogue continued, the officer became increasingly defensive. He insisted that the motorcyclist had misused the lane and that his actions were unsafe. The rider, who was more than prepared to back up his claims, mentioned he was well versed in the law. He explained that his actions were entirely legal. He was staying within the same lane and simply passing on the right, which is allowed under California rules. Every explanation he gave was met with more insistence from the trooper that his interpretation was the only one that mattered. The discussion grew more heated by the minute. The officer questioned why he had stopped the rider if no actual infraction had taken place. The rider was quick to point out that for the officer to demand his identification, there had to be proof of a crime, yet none was presented.
I just need your license, registration, insurance, okay?
Okay, and I'm asking you for what purpose?
I just told you, because you're passing vehicles within the same lane on the right.
That's allowed.
Safe passing on the right.
In a twist that illustrated a clear clash of authority and common sense, the writer even suggested that the trooper could confirm the proper interpretation by reviewing the actual law himself. Adding to the tension, the trooper decided to call his sergeant. While on the phone call with his sergeant, the officer was ordered to wrap up the stop without issuing a ticket. Yet, even after receiving those clear instructions, the trooper's behavior took a different turn. Instead of simply letting the individual go, he continued trying to use his authority to intimidate, leaning on the argument that the law was unclear. The trooper argued that the statutes were vague and hard to understand, a claim he repeated over and over. It soon became clear that he was desperate to avoid admitting any mistake by suggesting that the law itself was to blame. Okay, so that's the first thing. That's why I'm arguing, the motorcyclist said, his tone calm but assertive. He pointed out that his issue wasn't about a minor demand like handing over his ID. In fact, he knew he wasn't required to do so. Instead, he focused on the real problem, the confusion over the law. He explained, in plain language, that there is a big difference between ignorance and stupidity. While he admitted he didn't know everything, he was well aware of this particular statute in California. The motorcyclist reminded the trooper that the law clearly mentioned same lane, a detail many people understood, even if not perfectly. Moreover, the motorcyclist, who turned out to be an active-duty Navy officer with a strong grasp of California law, served as a shining example for citizens everywhere. This incident highlights how the trooper's actions were not only an abuse of power, but also a clear example of how law enforcement should never behave. A mistaken identity. In a case that raised questions about police procedures and the dangers of rushed judgments, a man named Patrick Mumford found himself caught in a confrontation that could have ended very differently.
We probably need to talk to you.
44 calling, one be a
What's your
master
name?
Call down to 608.
Stand up.
The incident began as Patrick was returning home after a visit to his probation office. Two officers approached him with the claim that warrants were out for his arrest. However, the warrants they mentioned were intended for a completely different man, a mistake that set off a chain of events marked by confusion and unnecessary force. From the very start, tension filled the air. The officers did not take the time to verify Patrick's identity or ask for identification in a calm, measured way. Instead, they moved quickly with sharp commands, instructing him to exit his vehicle immediately.
You'll go with him.
You know what? This lady told me I had a watch. Just seen this motherfucking lady.
5 Charlie 3 to 5 Charlie 1.
Within seconds, what could have been a routine check escalated into an aggressive encounter. Despite his understandable nervousness, Patrick attempted to comply with their demands, even though it was apparent that a mix-up was unfolding. The officers were convinced that Patrick bore a resemblance to the suspect linked to the warrants. This assumption drove them to act on the belief that the person before them was the one they had been seeking. Their focus on this perceived similarity overshadowed any need for proper identity verification. The situation spiraled rapidly, and in less than a minute from their initial contact, the decision was made to use a stun gun when Patrick did not immediately meet their expectations. The officers argued that his behavior appeared to be a sign of resistance, a claim that led to an abrupt and forceful intervention. As the confrontation continued, Patrick was tased and forcibly removed from his car. The aggressive tactics did not stop there. The officers continued to search him, suspecting he might be reaching for a weapon. Their search turned up nothing more than his wallet, which later revealed his identification.
Now, Michael, is that all really necessary, sir?
Yeah.
Change.
Hey, give him my money.
Pockets,
Give him my money, please.
everything.
Give him my money, please. I ain't got nothing. It took all y'all to do that. I ain't got shit.
All right, just watch out, man. Just chill out for a minute, okay? I promise you everything's going to go smoothly if you just calm down. All right, bring him over to the car so I can get the prongs off.
a clear piece of evidence that he was not the person sought by the arrest warrant. Unfortunately, by that point, the damage had already been done. The physical impact of the stun gun and the rough handling left Patrick not only injured, but also deeply shaken by the overwhelming display of force. The incident soon drew widespread attention, not only due to the apparent mistaken identity, but also because it highlighted serious concerns about law enforcement practices.
I don't know if you got a warrant, because you're not who I'm looking for, but here's the deal. When I ask you for ID because you look a lot like the person we're looking for...
Man,
that one's stuck.
Okay, when we ask you for ID because you look a lot like the person we're looking for that's living at this address,
oh, Lord.
You give us ID. And when you start this whole fighting nonsense, dude, you caught yourself a charge you didn't need to catch, man. All you had to do is give me this.
But the way you came up asking me out of nowhere.
The officers involved acted on assumptions rather than verifying facts, a mistake that resulted in severe consequences for an innocent man. The aggressive language and hurried decisions left Patrick no opportunity to clearly explain or correct the misunderstanding. The rush to judgment had transformed what might have been a minor encounter into a full-blown abuse of power. The fallout from the incident was significant. Patrick was initially charged with obstruction and violating probation, a situation that threatened not only his freedom, but also his job and position at college. The severity of the charges, compounded by the aggressive police behavior, painted a troubling picture of what can go wrong when procedures are ignored. However, the case took an important turn when an internal investigation was launched into the actions of the 4 officers on the scene. The investigation revealed that the officers did not follow proper procedure during the incident. Their failure to handle the situation with the care and caution required in sensitive encounters led to a re-evaluation of their conduct.
Okay, when I have someone in a car that looks like you have a warrant, I'm not going to play the hanky-panky game of teetering around. And when he's trying to get back into a car where I don't know if there's a weapon at, I'm going to act appropriately, sir.
As a result, all 4 officers were suspended from duty, a decision that underscored the need for accountability in law enforcement. In the wake of this revelation, Patrick was awarded a settlement of $100,000, providing a measure of justice for the ordeal he endured. Power, not protection. A quiet evening turned into a scene of escalating tension when Lawrence Walters, owner of a popular game store, stepped out during a quick meal break only 0.1 mile from his business. What was meant to be a brief pause in a long day became an incident of unnecessary hostility from local law enforcement.
Come here. You don't have no problem at all. I'm the owner of Retro Games. Huh? You better go look me up. Okay. Okay. No probable cause to stop me. That's why I'm here, because I see people walking behind this building right here. That's fine. I got a back door. I'm walking the Circle K. I'm glad you do. But listen here. You don't have a problem? Yes, I do. No, you don't. Yes, I do. If someone has to physically trespass, you better look at Georgia State Code. If I see somebody here at night walking behind a building. What's your name and badge number? My name is Leon McKinney. Okay, that's not probable cause. Yes, it is. Because it takes a business to trespass. I don't need probable cause. Yes, you do. I need articulable, reasonable suspicion.
On this night, Officer Leon McKinney was on his 3rd shift patrol, feeling bored and restless. Instead of remaining within his proper bounds, he decided to engage in what could only be described as a power play. Instructed by his sergeant to end the stop without issuing a citation, McKinney still chose to press on with actions that bordered on intimidation.
What's your date of birth? I'm not giving you my date of birth. You don't have reasonable articulable suspicion. I done told you. 209-25 women. All you got to do is listen here. Go on the state website, Georgia Department of listen here. Treasury. Listen here. Calm down. Secretary of State. Calm down. Calm down. Retro D Gaze LP. My name will pop up. Calm down.
The officer claimed that the law was unclear, a statement that appeared to serve as a shield rather than an explanation for his conduct. From the start, the conversation displayed a stark imbalance. The officer summoned Walters to approach, asserting a vague authority based on mere presence behind a building.
Faint clothes. So, there you go. He don't know you, man. It doesn't matter. I already told. I give him my name. It does matter. It does matter. It doesn't matter to me. It might matter to you. It matters to the state of Georgia. No, it doesn't. You better go look up at the code.
Walters, however, was firm in his response. As a business owner and someone well-versed in the local codes, he knew that simply walking behind a property did not amount to a criminal act. His tone remained calm and steady, even as McKinney's demands grew more aggressive. In the exchange caught on body cam, the officer repeatedly questioned Walters about his identity and intentions. Walters consistently provided his name and affirmed his association with Retro D Games, yet he refused to supply further personal details like his date of birth. His refusals were not acts of defiance, but expressions of his legal rights under the Fourth Amendment. Despite his clear explanations, McKinney continued to press the point, insisting that being behind a building after hours somehow constituted suspicious behavior. The situation worsened when Officer Terry Reynolds joined the confrontation. Reynolds brought an even more abrasive attitude into the encounter, echoing McKinney's unfounded claims that Walters was engaging in criminal behavior.
No. Okay. But what is your name? I already told you my name. My name is Lawrence Walters. Okay, Lawrence Walters. And where do you live? I live in Uvalde. Okay. That's the most you're going to get out of me. Okay.
The dialogue grew heated as the officers demanded additional identification and sought to pin Walters for what they termed obstruction. Walters, in return, maintained that his actions were fully within his rights. He repeatedly pointed out that his business was open and that his movements were neither suspicious nor illegal. Throughout the incident, the officer's behavior resembled more a show of bravado than proper law enforcement. Rather than diffusing the situation or accepting the evident explanations provided by Walters, McKinney and Reynolds escalated their demands. They dismissed Walters' clear knowledge of the applicable statutes and chose instead to rely on their own interpretations, misguided attempts to justify their actions with selective readings of the law. As the body cam footage later revealed, every moment of the interaction brimmed with unnecessary confrontation. What might have been resolved with a simple acknowledgement of Walters' rights spiraled into a power struggle between an overzealous cop and a determined business owner. Even when Walters reiterated that nothing suspicious was taking place, the officers pressed on, citing technicalities and insisting on compliance. In the end, Walters was forced under duress to provide further identification, and the officers made a move toward arresting him for obstruction, a charge that was widely seen as baseless. More troubling still was the fact that only McKinney's body cam footage saw the light of day, while Reynolds' recordings mysteriously went missing. This detail hinted at a broader concern over potential cover-ups and the misuse of authority.
Let's get in the car. Let's go. Okay. You had your chance. I get it. You got anything on you? No, I don't. I just got my cash. Here's what you do. Can I go and secure my money in my business before you take me to jail? Can you just take me? Why are you leaving? I was just going to get something to eat. That's all at Circle K. And where is it at in your business? It's in my cash register. I haven't even left tonight. That's what I'm saying. I'm still open.
Mistaken identity in Volusia County. In Volusia County, a mix-up turned an ordinary search into an unexpected confrontation. The police were chasing leads about a burglary when they came across a man named Joseph Griffin. The officers believed he fit the description of the suspect they were after. The report mentioned a white tank top, black shorts, and a beard.
If you're not in any trouble or anything, there's a burglary that happened. You kind of fit the description. Let me just make sure that you're not him, okay? All right.
I'm a vet. I have my ID.
Okay. Can I see your ID? Yeah. You literally, they said white tank top, black shorts, and they said that you had a beard. All right. So I'm not saying it's you, but it was a black male. Again, not saying it's you, buddy.
However, the description also included a detail that Joseph did not match, a key point later in the encounter. When the officers stopped Joseph, their tone was firm, yet meant to be polite. The law enforcement team explained that he resembled the suspect, and they needed to confirm that he was not involved in the burglary. Even though the police tried to reassure him by clarifying he was not immediately under arrest, the situation was tense. The officer made clear that the detention was precautionary. Despite their efforts to calm things down, the entire encounter was filled with stress, as few would feel comfortable being singled out in such a manner. Joseph cooperated carefully with the officers. He maintained a respectful and composed attitude despite the unsettling nature of the stop.
Listen, just bear with me, okay? Because you fit the description. I'm not saying you're guilty, but my sergeant's telling me to detain you. That's my sergeant.
I got you. I just had a daughter born 2 days ago, so I just have this online.
It's live?
I'm not
Do you mind setting it down here?
Yeah.
Okay. Look, I'll place it for you. Okay.
Right.
Just for now, I'm gonna detain you. Look, you're not under arrest. I'm detaining you right now because you fit the description. Okay. Just hang tight for me. Okay, buddy.
The officers were aware that this was a sensitive situation. Their words and actions suggested they wished to avoid an escalated confrontation, yet they were determined to do their job by following their lead. The decision to detain him was based solely on the initial description provided by witnesses. Alongside the apprehension, the police explained that Joseph was not under arrest and that this was a measure to prevent any possibility of him fleeing in case he turned out to be the actual burglar. The dialogue between the police and Joseph unfolded in a manner that showed the careful balance the officers tried to achieve. They delivered their instructions in a way meant to be understanding while still sticking to their orders. The officers were conscious of how unsettling the experience could be and tried to emphasize that their actions were procedural. They stressed that the entire process was simply an effort to verify his identity. However, the repeated insistence on his resemblance to the suspect only added to his discomfort. Even as he calmly provided his identification and explained that the encounter was being live-streamed for transparency, the pressure remained palpable. Meanwhile, the investigative process took its course in the background. The team reached out to a witness who had seen the burglary and requested a show-up identification. This method involved presenting a single individual to the witness for quick confirmation, a common tactic when only a rough description is available. As the witness reviewed the image, doubts began to form regarding the initial identification. The police learned that the details, particularly the clothing and other visible features, did not entirely match Joseph's appearance. This critical piece of evidence started to point away from him as a suspect. Throughout the ordeal, the officers worked diligently to ensure that the process stayed within legal bounds. They acknowledged that the description they were given was not a perfect match to Joseph, yet they felt compelled to follow their protocols. Even though their actions might have been seen as invasive or intimidating, the aim was to resolve the confusion swiftly. The entire encounter was a dramatic reminder of how relying on a broad description can lead to frustrating misunderstandings. It underscored that even when law enforcement acts with a focus on public safety, a slight error in detail can lead to a serious inconvenience for an innocent person.
Again, like I told you, we're not saying it's you, but you fit the description. That's why I'm detaining you. If it's not you, we're gonna cut you loose and you're free to go, okay? But I just want you to see through us why, literally they stole something right now and we just want to verify it's not you, okay?
After nearly 10 tense minutes, new information arrived in the form of a witness-provided picture. The updated image did not align with the initial description of the suspect. When the officers compared the image with the live situation, it quickly became clear that Joseph was not who they were searching for. With the new evidence in hand, it was determined that the brief detention would soon come to an end. The police assured him that no further action would be taken, a relief after what had felt like an extended period of anxiety.
We got a picture. Again, he's gonna run it through, make sure it's not you, and from what it looked like, buddy, you'll be out of here, okay?
Cool.
All right. So, look.
Hey, can one of y'all tell my girl to come pick me up off of Normandy, please? I know she got the baby at the home. Tell her to have her mom come pick me up or something.
All right, buddy.
I don't want to stress her out too much.
Can I put this on the floor?
In the end, Joseph Griffin was allowed to leave without further incident, and he was quickly reunited with his family, his wife and daughter waiting for him at home. Meanwhile, the real suspect was eventually located and apprehended later that day. This whole episode serves as an example of how a mistaken identification can lead to unnecessary confrontation. The situation highlights the challenges faced by law enforcement when working with vague or incomplete descriptions. It also shows that even in the midst of a serious investigation, a simple error can create a dramatic and stressful situation for everyone involved. How can law enforcement systems be improved to protect both public safety and individual rights, especially in high-pressure moments when mistakes might happen? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.